Well, more in 2024. When you think that you don't know what the next step is going to be, it somewhat comes to you. That's the beautiful thing about living life is we don't know what tomorrow holds for any of us. However, we know one thing that our faith can lead us to tomorrow. That's how the Lord gives it to us, one day at a time, our daily bread. And with each passing day, the world turns upside down sometimes or right side up. And as we know, more in 2024 is the theme for this year. And just like that, the Illinois GOP or the Illinois Republican Party chair, Don Tracy, resigns. Now, you guys know from listening to the show after the Illinois State Convention, Illinois Republican State Convention, that Don was kind of on the hot seat because of, and you can go out and look at Tom DeVore's page. You can see that Don's been on the hot seat because of this situation with Mark Shaw, who is his vice chair of the Republican Party here in Illinois. Mark was formerly a county chair in Lake County. He was lost the vote in that county a couple years ago. Therefore, he was no longer the chair, but he remained to be the Central States Committee person from that district. Now, Mark obviously was caught standing on the floor of the House. I think that I have a picture of Mark. In fact, if you go to Tom DeVore's page, you can see that Mark in all of his glory standing there presenting his delegate badge as the vote was being taken. Mark, this past week, just the other day, was removed from his vice chair position. The vote was pretty solid. There were a couple people who voted present, namely Rhonda Belford and Larry Smith. Rhonda, if you remember, is the county or the chair for the RNC, the chairwoman for the RNC. She won that vote at the state convention. Rhonda voted present. Larry Smith voted present. A couple of Central States Committee members decided that they weren't going to show up. He did get a couple of votes in the affirmative that they would like for him to stay on as vice chair, but ultimately he did not have enough votes to stay as vice chair. Well, shortly thereafter, and of course last night would be that shortly thereafter, about 5 o'clock last night, Don Tracy tenured a resignation letter. He sent that out first and foremost. I think he sent it to the Central States Committee members, and then put that out to each one of the chairs. And of course, there's so much scuttlebutt about what was said in the context of the letter. I encourage you to go out there. That letter is also out on the internet. You can go to Facebook. I know Tom DeVore has a copy up. Many other places have the copy of Don's letter. I'm going to share it on my page so you can see Don's letter. But what's kind of interesting is this. Even in Don's resignation, he doesn't take responsibility for what has transpired over his tenure of 3.5 years. Instead, he wants to play the blame game. Does that sound familiar? It's similar to what we hear from the Democrat side of the aisle right now, is the blame game. Blame the Republicans, blame Trump. And it's nonstop. And here we have the person who is to lead the party, rather than just say, you're right. I just didn't do a very good job of having a forward-looking growth plan, of taking on the challenges that exist in Illinois and turning Illinois back to a Republican state. Instead, he wanted to say it's hard to manage when you're constantly dealing with the infighting. Well, the infighting is this, Don, and now that you have officially tenured your resignation, I can be more open about sharing what I believe was part of the problem that exists, namely this, Don. You didn't have a bench. In fact, no one was allowed to be on your bench. You restricted people from being a part of the Republican Party. Working with the working class people, that was a fail. You also, as I said before, you've talked about unifying, but you also talked about the infighting amongst the Republican Party. But you yourself had an allegiance or alliance with many people who were associated with Richard Irvin. Now, granted, we're going to have our differences amongst the Republican Party. And I'm the first one to say, you guys know where I stand. Darren Bailey is my guy. And he was in 2022. But we had some other conservative candidates running for then that gubernatorial race, that primary. Paul Schimpf, uh, a great conservative man. Gary Rabine, I consider Gary a conservative. Obviously, unfortunately, Gary, he's no longer in the fight here in Illinois. He has moved his business to Florida. And then finally, Jesse Sullivan. We had other conservative people, and I wasn't for Jesse. I appreciate Jesse's effort. I appreciate Gary Rabine's effort. I appreciate Paul Schimpf's effort. But we had one candidate who had a proven track record of voting for Democrats up until about, I think it was the 2020 election. In municipal elections, primaries, general elections, Richard Irvin pulled Democrat ballots. And suddenly Richard Irvin shows up, and you guys have all seen the video. In fact, I should have pulled it out of the archives of Richard Irvin just basically um, applauding and building up JB Pritzker on stage and talking about how wonderful of a governor he is. This is who Don Tracy was supporting. And maybe not directly, and I don't think Don would ever come out and say that. He did convince Richard Irvin to say something nice before before Darren. This was down. They had a get together down at the down in Springfield, and he got Richard to say, basically that he was putting his support behind Darren, but that was short lived because there was no support from really any of the other gubernatorial candidates. I'll say that Jesse was kind enough to donate his office that he held right there on the square in Springfield. Gary was supportive in the fact that he pledged some money, which was nice. Obviously, we needed a lot more, and we needed a lot more boots on the ground, and we needed a lot more people to show up to the ballot box to overcome JB Pritzker and his millions and millions of dollars. But Don, that was the biggest thing, is when it was rumored that GOP Republican resources were used for the Irving campaign when it came to mailers. Truth or not, the fact that that would even be brought up, there must be something to it. Your general counsel, John Fogerty, great guy. I like John personally. I think, we probably could go out and have a beer together. Unfortunately, John also put his support behind Richard Irvin. He was his general counsel for his campaign. This is why it is that the infighting amongst the Republican Party, it has nothing to do with those people who are truly supportive of the Republican platform. It's the people who are trying to manipulate the Republican platform. Richard Irvin being part of that. Before Richard Irvin, when Richard Irvin got into the race, there was a gentleman named Ken Griffin. Ken was one of the largest contributors to the Republican Party. Ken moved his company, Citadel, out of Illinois. He's worth about $26 billion, give or take a few billion on any given day. And Ken no longer is in Illinois. He supported Richard Irvin to the sum of $50 million. Now, was it hard to lose somebody like Ken Griffin? By all means. You hate to lose a supporter. Ken Griffin supported Bruce Rauner in his race. But I guess my point being with Ken Griffin is this. Ken was really about manipulating the system rather than looking out for all of us, you and me, and those people who have pushed back. And that's basically how we've gotten to this point. Darren Bailey started something, and he said it over and over and over again. He started a movement, the grassroots movement here in Illinois. These are people that didn't necessarily go to the polls prior to 2022. These are not people who are going to be members of the local Republican Party. These are people like you and me, going to work every day, paying the rent, buying the groceries, paying the astronomical gas tax that's going to recheck itself. This is who Darren Bailey represented. and he unified people. As I've shared with you before, Darren didn't get the support of the Republican Party in Illinois. You just heard that. The leadership was not behind Darren Bailey. In fact, there were county chairs that wouldn't even talk to Darren. There were congressional candidates that wouldn't even take photos with Darren. But Darren didn't let that affect him. His trust and faith is in God. He just kept moving forward. He had a forward-looking growth plan as what's the term I'm looking for? Rudimentary as it was. There you go. There's a word. As rudimentary as it was, he built from the county basis up. So instead of getting county chairs to support him, he was able to go out and get county supporters that lead people within each county, 102 counties. Then he also had regional coordinators, county coordinators, regional coordinators. Then from there, he built out teams in each county. Now, was it perfect? By no means. Did he have everybody filled? By no means. I mean, we had on the books, we had probably about 10,000 volunteers. How many of those were actually boots on the ground volunteers? Maybe a third of them, maybe not even a third, maybe 10 to 15%. It's hard to gauge that, right? Because it's water under the bridge. But Darren was able to take on the establishment, and that's where all of this started. When we had the Central States Committee meeting in December after the November 2022 election, fireworks were going, right? There were people that showed up in Bolingbrook and they were ready to let their voices be heard. In fact, they were restricted on comments to 90 seconds, but many people were able to voice their displeasure with where things were going. That kind of percolated, and obviously what came out of that meeting was just a matter of a year building in 2023. And then you come to the 2024 where there's going to be a state convention. And that was the first state convention since 2016 because they did not have an in-person state convention in 2020 because of the COVID crazy, right? So they decided to do it virtually, which isn't near what it would be if it's in person. And you also had other people that had gotten on board with the grassroots movement, namely somebody like Dean White, who is now the Republican RNC chairman for the state of Illinois. And you had a lot of other people getting involved, starting to feel some excitement. And part of that excitement was that, wow, we have the ability to take back our state. But we knew that in order to take back the territory, we needed to fix the Republican Party. And that's where we're at today. We're fixing the Republican Party. And as always, right there, joining me is Ryan McKenzie of the Ryan Mack Show. Ryan, as always, thank you for being here. Look at this. We've got people in the comment section. I had forgot to turn it on. Thank you, Jenny Miller, for joining us. We need Republicans in position that are true conservatives. Rhino Republicans are a dime a dozen, and their running mates that sided with them showed their true colors. Darren Bailey stood firm and did not waver. His word remains firm, and he cannot be bought. And you know what? I do want to cover that, Ryan, but go ahead and greet everybody.
Hello, everybody.
First and foremost, how are you feeling, Ryan? I'm not going to disclose what your medical condition is.
I'm still a little banged up, but I'm all right. I'm pulling it through. I wanted to be here. I didn't want to miss all week.
I don't know. Ryan, knowing your medical condition, banged up and pulling it through is not how you
I'm going to say it like it is. No, I'm feeling much better, so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on again. So
no, it's always good, Ryan. I the show, obviously I was lost, Tanya will tell you, my beautiful wife is back in studio with me today. This time she's not sitting directly across from me, where I would look at the camera and out of the corner of my eye, all I could see is my wife. And, many of you know that she's a kindergarten teacher, and therefore I felt I was a little unnerved. Now I'm feeling a little better today because this is the second time in studio for her. And let's see. Darren is such an amazing gentleman. Mandork 1990. Darren is such an amazing gentleman. I'm so happy Ryan and I have had the opportunity to meet him and his family numerous times in person. We have and remain supportive of him and his actions to Tibet. Something.
Yep. Yeah, so it's
Tibet.
Rumble. She's on Rumble commenting today.
That I was going to say, is that your wife?
Yeah, it's Amanda. She's on Rumble watching you.
She's Mandork 1990. Thank you, Amanda. But yes, I'm glad that you're feeling better. It's always good to have you here. As I started, I went on a little tangent there, which isn't uncommon for me. Having my wife in studio again, I'm starting to feel it's real, right? Because she's now retired from District 87, 35 years of teaching kindergarten. As I jokingly have said many times over, she has escaped Shang Shaw. She's Shang Shaw redemption for Tanya.
Shawshank.
Shawshank. Shang Shaw. Shang Shaw.
Was that Chinese version?
Is it Shawshank? Shang Shaw? What is it?
Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption. Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, there you go.
And that other guy that played
Freeman Morgan. There you go.
Freeman Morgan. I'm a little backwards today, but at least I'm alive. I'll tell you Tuesday, Ryan, and I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but I do. I was feeling the effects of having a wedding on Saturday.
Oh, I bet.
Mean, a lot of emotions, a lot of everything. Yeah, it was a lot. So I was definitely, besides having my beautiful wife sitting across from me for the first time in studio, she had never been in the studio before. We had that. We had you not able to attend. So as I was sharing with Tanya, it's kind of, I like having you there. You break up the monotony. You know how it is in studio, if you're on the radio or even in podcast, having another person there.
Yeah, it just breaks up and changes pace for sure.
It allows you to reset your mind.
Yeah,
having somebody else think and talk, because we do this for a full off.
Thinking, but I do.
Well, at least talking. No thinking required, just talking. But yeah, no, it's all good stuff. I want to hold on. I have another comment from Jenny. Ben Carson and my faith votes taught me a lot, and I am grateful. And you're right. This is where we're at. We're truly seeing the movement of Darren Bailey. You and Amanda both have had an opportunity to be with Darren at different events. You guys know the kind of character this man is. How many men duplicate a trip that they took with their children, with their grandchildren, out to Mount Rushmore? I mean, he loaded up a trailer or an RV, a pull behind RV. Funny story. And it pertains to the wedding. I actually called Darren the other day. You'll get a kick out of this, Ryan. And I know I'm going long with all of these stories, but I couldn't bring this up the other day. So at the wedding venue where my daughter got married, the Hesed House, beautiful, one of a kind venue. I believe it to be one of the best wedding venues in the Midwest, especially in Illinois. Affordable. This is a plug for the Hesed House, but beautiful setting, 55 acres, apple orchard, formerly had a par 3 golf course on it and a runway, still has an active runway on the property, an Airbnb, a bridal suite, and this beautiful venue that actually looks like a church. Beautiful patio, pond. Long story short is this, or short story long, as I like to say it. Short story long is Hannah and Jim were married in front of the pond. So about a couple 100 yards away from the venue. And when you set up for outdoor ceremony, there's chairs that are put in place. Well, one of the things that happens shortly after the ceremony is the chairs get gathered, because there's only so many chairs. And sometimes we have to gather them up. First, we want them out of the elements and put them in what's called a Kwanzaa hut. And I say we, because I help out when I'm not having a wedding. I actually am having a wedding, meaning I work at the wedding venue pretty much every weekend. So I know what's going to happen. Well, lo and behold, the owner of the venue, who has the trailer ball hitch, he takes off without leaving the ball hitch. Now there's a trailer that doesn't have a ball hitch, or a vehicle to to pull. We have a vehicle to pull it with a
Yeah.
trailer hitch, but
Not a
not
hitch.
the ball hitch. So the young people working out there decided they just would peruse the parking lot to see if they could find a ball hitch. Well, they come upon a very nice Ford Expedition.
Mm.
I'll give you a clue. The license plate said Bailey.
Did they scarf on his?
Well, it gets better, Ryan. Yes, they took the ball hitch off of Cindy Bailey's vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
Darren was not able to be there because he was pressing hard to get to this vacation that he took his 4 oldest grandchildren on with Cindy.
Yeah.
And Cindy wanted to be at Hannah's wedding. They created a bond that only is possible because of Jesus Christ and their love for Jesus. And in fact, Cindy came out and said something on her social media page about that. Well, Cindy stayed long enough for the ceremony, but she wanted to get back home. So lo and behold, she takes out of there, no ball hitch. And the young lad that removed the ball hitch from Cindy's Bailey's vehicle shows back up only to find that Cindy's vehicle is no longer in the parking lot, hoping that said vehicle would return to the parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, the vehicle never returned. And so Desi Anderson, Desi and Nick are the owners of the Hesed House. Desi running for state representative in the 91st district here in Illinois. Her opponent is Sharon Chung. So one of the reasons why we definitely need to get behind Desi, obviously her and Nick are fighting hard. But Desi was there that night, and she sent Cindy a message and said, "Hey, Cindy, I just have to tell you what happened." And she goes through the thing. Cindy gets out along the road and takes a picture of the back of the bumper. And here you see her license plate and no ball hitch. So everybody gets a laugh out of it. The next day I called Darren Bailey and I said, I'm sorry, my friend, golly, the ball hitch. Now the young man that took it off, Desi Anderson, had him do a video apologizing to the Baileys. And it was a cute video. And he's like, "I'm sorry, I took your ball hitch off." He was perusing the parking lot in order to find a ball hitch in order to do the work at the wedding ceremony. Everything went well. But Darren goes, "David, you want to get a good kick? I'm putting something up on Facebook. Tell everybody that we were delayed by 2 hours because we had to replace the ball hitch." Obviously, as a farmer of as many acres as Darren and his sons do, they had plenty of ball hitches laying around. That did not delay their Monday trip. Cool thing about their departure on their trip was seeing their family gather around, holding hands, praying before they left for their trip. What a great, to duplicate a trip you took with your 4 children, with your 4 oldest grandchildren, that's the character of the man we're dealing with. Okay.
That's a character of somebody who should be leading Illinois.
Somebody that should be leading Illinois. And now, as Don Tracy has resigned, there is rumor, why wouldn't Darren take it over? And that's a discussion. I want to quickly go over this little topic here. Don Tracy ally Jeannie Ives attacks grassroots, IR Trump Jr. event, and now setting sights on Illinois GOP chairmanship.
That's a shame. I used to respect her.
Well, I think a lot of us do, can say that. I campaigned for Jeannie. I went and knocked doors. Darren drove the bus up to Palatine area. And we went and knocked doors for both Jeannie Ives and her congressional race. And we also knocked doors for Christopher Bose, B-O-S. So we were up there. Darren actually pulls up in the bus and Jeannie comes out of the campaign office there. I think it was Palatine or somewhere up north in the suburbs. And comes out and says, "Darren Bailey, you even drive the bus." Well, because that's the character. The guy can drive the bus. He can fix a tractor. He can pull the plow. He can hitch his camper and take his 4 oldest grandchildren. He can lay his weapons on a table doing a puzzle on Christmas or New Year's Eve and tell the governor to come get him.
Yeah.
He
Come
can
and
take the governor to court. He can stand on a stage and tell the governor, basically, I'm not going anywhere. You might win this race, but I'm not going anywhere. And that's the impact Darren Bailey has had on our state. When it comes to this grassroots movement, I
Mhm.
think he is solely responsible for the grassroots movement.
Absolutely.
And all the legs, we're getting legs now. We're building momentum. We're seeing that this resignation,
Yeah.
the vote to get Mark Shaw out of the position of vice chair. Hopefully, Mark, even though he's reluctant to do so, sees the light of day. I mean,
Yeah.
Mark. I mean, it's pretty obvious, Mark. And I want to get to the photo and add it to the screen here real quick. But it's pretty evident, Mark. I mean, it's not like there's any doubt where things are at.
Yeah.
We can see it right before our very eyes, Mark, that this is what we have, Mark. You tell me. You're standing there holding a badge,
Yep.
voting on the convention floor at the Illinois Republican State Convention, holding up a lanyard with a badge that says you're a delegate when you're not a delegate. The interesting thing is it says the grassroots stuck it to the man by pounding away on keys in their basement like keyboard warriors. And this isn't Mark saying this. This is
Yeah.
Deputy Committee Member Jennifer Neubauer saying this about you and me
Good
and
Lord.
the whole host of grassroots people out there. They're you talk about, we know that Joe Biden's imploding in his campaign.
Yep.
The Illinois Republican Party, when
They'll
I
lose their minds.
they're losing their mind. The establishment,
Yeah.
the establishment, the leadership are literally on a trajectory, which is good
Yeah.
because
Should be.
until we get to ground zero, we can never rebuild it fully
Yep.
and restore our state, take
The
back what
convention,
is
and then
rightfully
now,
ours.
yeah, now the resignation of Don. Look at the moves that have been made in just a matter of weeks. Look what the grassroots movement has done. To those naysayers who are saying, why are we fighting? It's not worth it. Illinois is a lost cause. Look at the movements that just were made. We pressured them to step down because they were frauds, and look what's happened. They stepped down. You have to pressure people who are not doing the job that you appointed them to do, you elected them to do. Call them out and hold them accountable. That's all it takes. Even if it takes longer than you want or need, they will back down if enough of us stand up, and that's what happened.
Well, and it did. And you know what? It's pretty amazing to see the efforts. No one said it was going to be overnight. No one said it was going to be easy. Nobody, when Blaine Wilhauer, Adam Niemer, Dan
Mhm.
Calkins, Chris Miller, myself, Darren Bailey were on the Restore Illinois tour. And this was before Darren even announced to run for governor. We were on a mission to restore the state.
Yeah.
And we hit the resistance and the challenges that we're still in some manners facing today, which is pretty amazing. But all along, we knew, as Abraham Lincoln said, if I had 4 hours to cut down a tree, I would spend 3 hours sharpening the axe.
Yep.
And that's what we've been doing. We've been sharpening the axe. And axe, isn't it? As you said, Ryan, building a bench.
Mhm.
When Darren went out and built out 102 counties and 11 different regional coordinators and put together a team of over 10,000 people who were willing to help with the campaign, he built something. He
Mhm.
sharpened the saw. He sharpened the axe. He was ready to take it on. Now all we're seeing, the tree's going to fall, but we just keep chopping away.
Yep.
And that's what the grassroots is going to do. We are talking about people, as I said earlier, that have never voted prior to Darren Bailey, people
Mhm.
who had never even thought about becoming a precinct committee person or running for school board or running for county board, people who were totally had checked out of the
Yep.
political process.
Yep.
And
He
now they've
energized them.
re-engaged.
Mhm.
Hey, it's about 4:30, and I see that we have our guest is in studio with us, and I just want to give a brief little, uh, you know, introductory to him. This is a man that I believe could definitely take on the chairmanship position of our state. He's got all the qualities. He has demonstrated through his leadership as the Tazewell County chairman that, look at the events that he's had. You're looking at, uh, he had Mike Pence a couple years ago where there were like 900. That was the election, the primary year of 2022. He's had Ron DeSantis. Now recently they just had Mike Johnson at their Lincoln Day dinner. And granted, it's a combination between Tazewell and Peoria County, but the excitement that they create. And now granted, I'm not a big fan of Mike Pence. I mean, he was who he was. I'm not a big fan of Ron DeSantis. He is the best governor we have, and I believe he is part of the future of the Republican Party.
Yep.
And Mike Johnson, I think that at the very least, he has held on, which has been, we know what he's up against because there are plenty of people in the Republican Party in Washington, D.C. that would have no problem allowing the control to go back to the Democrats in the House.
Yep.
So I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Mike Johnson has at least been able to pull back on the reins to keep us, in position for 2024 in the election of 24 to return President Donald J. Trump to the White House. But my friend Jim Rule has been there the whole time, and let's just add him right there. He is. Jim, can we hear you?
I can hear you. Can you
well,
hear
then
me?
If you can hear me, we can hear you. Jim, thanks for jumping on the DPB show today.
Hey,
we so appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you for the very, very kind words.
Well, you've heard us. I mean, this is the conversation now that Don Tracy has resigned, and we're seeing this thing just implode. Other Central States Committee people jumping on and saying things. The commenters in the sections. I just real quick, Joanne Knittmeyer says we need more people to step up. Every PC will make a difference in the next 2 years. Interesting, because I know that's near and dear to your heart, Jim, and I want you to expound upon that or expand on that conversation, because it is important now that we have this momentum to go ahead and fill those positions.
Yeah, we do. And keep this in mind. I mean, you guys were talking about the grassroots. The grassroots, the Republican Party has always, and it will always belong to the grassroots, not the elitists, but the people who make this country work, the people who make our communities work. And that's the grassroots people. One of Don Tracy's, and look, Don Tracy, good guy. I mean, I like him as a person, but we really need at this point in time bold leadership and a steadfast, steadfast determination towards winning, which is not something that we've done in quite a long time. And we've got to start building our PC ranks, our precinct committeeman ranks. We've got a lot of talent in our communities. We've got a lot of good people who are angry and want to get involved. And this is a way for them to do that. So, there is a huge effort to get the PC ranks built up.
And the interesting thing, Jim, is I sat there on the convention floor.
Yeah.
And Don was up at the podium. And believe me, I think I've said this before. I don't care about, if you're a good person, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I have nothing personal against Don Tracy, but I also am sitting back on the bench. I am a bench warmer, and I have no problem sitting on the bench and looking out on the field, and all I see is people making errors and people striking out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, then it's time to get the people off the bench. And if you don't have people on the bench, whose problem is that?
Shame on us, right?
Yeah.
Shame on us. So it's not a personality. I know that a lot of people like to get into the nitpicking. No, I heard it best this morning when I talked to my friend Joe Alexander. He said that our mutual friend, all three of us, actually, Ryan, you need to meet him someday, Jay Debates, who supplied us with our Trump signs, said it best. I don't care, Joe, about any of these personality conflicts. All I care about is saving our country. In order to do that, we need to put Trump back in office. So I am laser focused on doing that. And I know that you're also laser focused, and we'll talk more about that. But part of that is on the convention floor, I sat there, Jim, and I kept asking the same question as Don was presenting himself to the convention. And he would talk about precinct committeemen, quantify it. How many? And that's throughout our Central States Committee. They can't. Now, Jim, you know this. You're a chair. Every chair knows how many precinct committee people they have.
Yes. You better know.
Yeah.
Why don't you call your 102 county chairs and just do a little quick tally of 102 counties, and we would quickly know that number. You know, I've been tempted to do it myself. I just have to find a few more hours in the day. You know, between landing planes at a wedding venue and taking trailer hitches off of Cindy Bailey's, ball hitches off of Cindy Bailey's expedition to move chairs. But, you know, that's what we expect out of our leadership, out of our state party.
Yeah.
And you were alluding to it. So knowing who you have on your bench, isn't that what a precinct committeeman? If you truly know your numbers, you have to do it in your business, right? You've got to know the numbers. You have to know the weekly totals, the amount of payroll that's going out, the amount of revenue that was created when ringing the registers. I mean, it just seems so commonsensical.
Yeah. And you've got to know those numbers so that you can react to the different situations you find yourself in. And control those situations rather than letting those situations control you. And that's what's happened in there's absolutely no one in control right now in the Illinois Republican Party. And we have got to start looking at these numbers. We've got to start figuring out how to win, where we need to get the votes, and hone that down to each precinct. Look, we've got a couple races. Tazewell County, for the most part, is all red from the county level on down. So we're pretty proud of that. But we do have a couple Democrats that are going to be running against different people in the upcoming December election that they were slated. So, you know, we are analyzing where we need to get votes. We need to figure out who we need to build relationships with and make sure that they get to the polls that, you know, that on election day. So there's a lot of work to do. And the Illinois GOP should be driving that, and they're not.
Well, you know, the interesting thing, our mutual friend Joe Alexander said it this morning. He said a lot of people have been asking him, is Trump going to come to Illinois? Well, you know when Trump will come to Illinois? When we show Trump that we would be a Trump state. Now, granted, I also shared with Joe, I believe this election year, you could see Illinois close the gap down under 10 points. That would be a victory. Now, it's not going to get Trump the electoral votes, but at least it would be resounding. Yeah. Trump has to spend his time in North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. There are states where we know that he's already leading according to the polls. Now, once again, polls are polls, but at the very least, if the polls are showing Trump up, they should never show a positive picture of Trump. And, you know, I don't want to be mesmerized by that, because I believe we got a lot of work to do. As you said, the momentum we build going into November is the same momentum we're going to have, as Joanne says, going into 2025, when we truly start putting people in place at the local level, the school board races, the township races, the county board races. Those are things. Well, county board is actually this election cycle, but the school board, the mayors, those are positions that have a lot of clout in our local communities. And ultimately, that's part of the reason that we lost the state of Illinois, because we conceded that consolidated elections were nonpartisan.
Yep.
Who fed us that line of goods?
Mm-hmm. Right.
The Democrats.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Jim. So going forward, we can sit here and talk about all that's wrong, but we know that we have a big task in front of us. It's time to choose a new leader for our party. a short list of names? Do you have any ideas? What would be the qualities that you would see in a candidate to lead our party?
Yeah, somebody that first and foremost is going to listen. Somebody that is going to listen to the county chairs, the PCs, the people of the state, and that means you got to roll up your sleeves and get out there and work with them. You got to get to know who your county chairs are. You got to get to know who the PCs are. So you got to become involved in that whole process. Because look, the issues that we face here in Central Illinois are different than the issues that that people face in Chicago or in Rock Island or way down southern Illinois. So you've got to know all the dynamics that are going on, all the people in play, and you can't do that if you don't get out into the field and talk to these people and become involved in the process. So you need somebody that's going to listen. You need somebody that does, in fact, genuinely care about the grassroots. The Republican Party always will belong to the grassroots people, and we saw that as you guys were alluding to earlier. We saw that in Collinsville, and it was a beautiful process. To be honest with you, David, you and I were sitting across the aisle and exchanging glances during that whole process. It's like, what the heck? And it was the people spoke down there. And it was a pretty amazing thing to see. The future of the party. I mean, we need to have some clear-cut goals on where we're going to be, how we're going to turn this state red. There's a lot of people working towards that end, but it should be the Illinois GOP who brings all these people together and is working as one. Otherwise, we're all going in different directions. Somebody that can talk, somebody that can listen. Somebody that can build coalitions and get everybody working together. That doesn't mean that we all agree on the issues, but we have civil discourse. We talk about those things. We find those items, those issues that we all do agree on, and we move forward based on that. Yeah. And that's what we need in our next chair.
And I've got another point, but Ryan, it seems like you're chomping at the bit here.
Well, you were alluding to the listening measures, and I think communication is the biggest thing. When you have a nominee, Darren wins the nominee by large, and then you have the chair of the party not really coming out and getting behind Darren as the candidate. That spoke volumes to me. When you're the chair of the state party, whoever the nominee ends up being, you need to put the party behind them in leadership roles and push everything towards that candidate, regardless if you agree with them on every topic or not. That is the nominee of the party. It's the same thing at the national level. Regardless of who you think your guy was as a chair or whatever, get behind him, because that's what moves the needle. You can't just say, well, Richard lost, so I guess we're just out of it. No, that's what divided the whole party to begin with. People who
who does that the best right now
want nothing to do with Richard, and it just what are you doing?
Yeah.
The Democrats are in lockstep, no matter.
They're experts at it.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if you had joined us yet in studio, Jim, but that was awful tough to swallow, right? The wealthiest man in Illinois, Ken Griffin, at Citadel Corporation, $26 billion, give or take a few billion, was firmly behind Richard Irvin. That should tell you something. He's also very supportive of Bruce Rauner, but he put $50 million into Irvin's campaign. And as soon as he was defeated, what did Ken do? He packed up his company.
He left
and went to Miami.
Yeah.
And then instantly started supporting Ron DeSantis and his run for president. Like I said, the man has every right to support whoever he wants, but we know, as Jim will tell you, because he was party to this, I was here in Bloomington when we got word that Richard Irvin was showing up in town, and he was going to have an event here at a local business. And the campaign manager of Bailey's team called me and said, hey, can you get some people out there with some signs? We really got to press into that this guy is, he's not Gary Rabine. He's not Jesse Sullivan. He's not Paul Schimpf. Those guys are Republicans.
Right.
This guy had a proven track record, plenty of videos out there, and ran a a mailbox campaign of disparaging other Republican candidates.
Mm-hmm.
That should tell you everything you needed to know about where this man stood, because he never truly got out there. In fact, Jim was at in Morton protesting Richard Irvin that same day.
We were carrying signs too. Yeah.
Jim was carrying signs, but Jim also, as the chair of Tazewell County, put on an event, a forum for all 5 candidates to have a lively discussion.
Yeah.
And who did not show up?
It's Richard Irvin, right?
Yeah. There was an
empty chair. We put the chair on the stage. His chair was on the stage, and we had everybody else showed up. Shimp showed up. They all showed up. But there was an empty chair on the stage, and that in itself, I mean, talk about communication. That in itself sent a message, and it was loud and clear. And I think one of the things that Darren Bailey went during that gubernatorial debate, he went over to that chair and lifted it high above his head, and this thing went viral. And he said, "Where is this guy? Where is?"
He goes, "I want to talk about this. I want to talk about why he isn't here.
Yeah,
he seems to be all in our mailboxes.
Yep.
But he can't come and openly defend his positions.
Just wants the
here
vote to him.
But the reason I digressed a little bit was because he had a proven voting record as a Democrat. Not to say you can't be a Democrat and choose to become a Republican, but suddenly be a Democrat, voting Democrat up till 2020, and then suddenly want to become the governor, the nominee for governor. When you have, I went down a rabbit hole. I have a big question, Jim, and I know you and I discuss this often. And you can give us as much information as you want. I've been talking about this over and over and over again. When you look at the Democrat Party, the party of George Soros, the party of tech billionaires, which it looks like some of those tech billionaires are deciding that they can see the writing on the wall, so they're quickly throwing money at Trump right now. But the New World Order, the Great Reset people that are out there, they fund the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
The Democrats are funded very well. And they're funded because a lot of those positions they hold in government, whether it would be in municipal, township, county, state. And there's an expectation, not written, not mandated, but it's very clear that if you want to advance in your position in government, you better get behind the team. And so they're paid and promotions come. I mean, we know that. The Chicago way, this is not what Jean-Claude Van Damme says is a cheap fake. This is true. We can document Michael Madigan and the Madigan rules. It's very clear. The guy's being indicted for exactly what we're talking about. But Jim, we don't pay people on the Republican side.
No, we don't. And that's a huge problem. If you look these positions like the state chair, it's a self-funded position. So everything that Don Tracy does comes out of his own pocket. Everything that the chair does comes out of his or her own pocket. And that's a problem, because when we look around the country, there are a number of other states where the Republican Party does in fact pay their chair, or at least cover their expenses.
Refund, yeah.
And the way it's set up now, there's a lot of talent out there who could bring this party together, but they need to get paid. I mean, it should be a paid position. They need compensation. They got to make a living. They got to raise a family, but not everybody has the wherewithal to, like Don Tracy, to be able to self-fund a position like that.
Or Rich Porter, who used to be the former RNC chair. Now we have a new RNC chair in Dean White. Dean had a family business, employed 300 people, just locally, just got recently involved. Hey, real quick, I've got to jump back to the commenters are in the section. I don't know if you guys see. Do you guys see the comments when I highlight them
I
up
do.
in the thing?
I don't know if Jim
Do you
does.
see it on your screen where it says Tanya
Some
Blumenshine?
lady named Tanya is saying something.
Yeah, she says, "What happened to our local GOP after the Richard Irvin protest?" Well, I can tell you, here's what happened here in McLean County, and it's a good point, and it's one that I want to definitely answer. I mean, so Jim protested in Morton. We protested in Bloomington. Jim protested in Morton. He was scheduled, Richard Irvin was, and his entourage to go to Eureka. They canceled Eureka. They shortly thereafter went into black, meaning they started disbanding their campaign. They knew they had lost. There were sources out there, political strategists in the state of Illinois that I still see at our Illinois State Convention that had Richard Irvin winning by 16 points still in late May. I mean, the guy he had Darren outdistanced his competition by 42 points.
Yeah.
He had over 50% of the vote, and no one got any higher than 15 points. Richard himself got 15. He was behind Jesse Sullivan. But I know where my wife's going with this. Our local GOP hit a buzzsaw because yours truly stood out in front of a local business that did not want to host Darren Bailey. They wanted to host Richard Irvin and Jesse Sullivan. They also had their candidate. We were never invited. They started to disparage yours truly for being out there, exercising his First Amendment right? I mean, you can protest. They said, well, this business has been very influential in Republican politics. How dare you? How dare you do this? How dare you do that? You terrible person.
Oh, okay.
And they pulled their support from the GOP. Well, what it allowed us to do, it allowed us to go in and build out our Republican Party here in McLean County. And for the most part, there isn't anyone right now in the Republican Party. We might have a few that are not as on board with Trump as most of us. But as you said, Ryan, we have one candidate. We have one nominee. And right now, I don't see the full court press coming from the state party. I do see it coming from local parties like Caswell County just got their Trump signs in last night. Jim was working on that, and he's got something out there that you can go and share. We have our McLean County Republican Party is also asking for donations for signs. Jim has put out there that he's asking for donations for sign. And once again, what does that cover? Here locally, it covers the cost of the signs, first and foremost, but we have 3 county board races that are instrumental to us maintaining, at the very least, a deadlock on the county board, if not trying to go 1 seat or 2 seats ahead. And those campaigns are going to cost money. And if we are able to get enough donations from the signs that we currently have, we can help fund those campaigns, because there's a lot of work to do in those county board races. But I know that was a long way around to getting a donation for a sign, but this is what should be going on.
Yeah.
In our party right now. And as Jim said, there is no rudder. Jim's a Navy guy, Ryan. If you guys had never met before today, probably.
No.
I've never met
Ryan McKenzie of the Ryan Mack Show. He's been on with the DPB show. Ryan helps me out. I mean, if it wasn't for Ryan, it's pretty boring here at the DPB show.
I do what I can.
But Jim was in the Navy, so he knows what a rudderless ship, the meaning of that, and the impact that has. You go nowhere, and right now we are going nowhere. But getting back to the money, because I didn't want to deviate from that.
Where do we get the money as a state party to do things that Democrats are doing?
That's one of the responsibilities that will fall upon the shoulders of our leader, our state leader. They're going to have to come up with a funding mechanism. We're going to have to monetize our party and start to resemble a business. You know, I loved it when Stan Nord said it. He said it best. The Democrats run their party as a business.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans run theirs as a garage sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is,
I've never heard truer words.
And what happens once we get people into office, once we're successful about getting everybody elected, then we kind of throw up our hands and say, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
and we don't get involved and engaged again until the next election cycle. We have to stay involved 24 or around the year, every year round, and it is a constant. It's a constant thing that we have to do.
And I think some of that, with the funding gap that we have, I think that's parlaying with the message of the grassroots movement. You start a movement with the grassroots and build up the party again, then you'll start getting the donations and the money coming in, because I think people were tired of the same voices running the party and dividing amongst the candidates that weren't chosen when they ran. I think if you bring the party to where it needs to be, I think the funding will come. You have to have a singular message and one message behind one individual that is the front runner to some of these campaigns.
Let me
be united as a party. Otherwise, you're gonna have nothing to
go
lean
ahead,
on.
Jim.
To add on to that, Ryan,
Yeah.
One of the big things that we've just we keep hearing over and over and over again is unity, unity, unity. We got to get the party together. That's fine. We do have to get the party together because, as you say, once we get the party together, people will come on board. They'll get involved. They'll feel confident. But we've got to clean our house first. We have got to, unity doesn't. If there's a cancer that exists within the organization, unity doesn't mean we bring that cancer in. We get it out.
Yep.
We have to start cleaning house, getting rid of the elitists and their power grabs. We need bold and decisive leadership, people that will stand up and say no, and people that will bring other people together.
Well, the interesting thing, Ryan and Jim, is this. Darren Bailey was very animate in regards to what took place a couple different things. I was going to touch upon this today, and I might have to wait till next Tuesday. But I knew very early when Darren confided in me that he had a meeting with Dan Proft from Play by the Rules PAC. And I knew how the whole thing went down. I know the conversations. I know the colorful metaphors that were used by Dan Proft towards then Darren's campaign manager, Jose Durbin. They went to this country club, and it was like a smoke-filled room. And there's Dan Proft. He loves his cigars, and he was sitting there at the table, and he slid across a check for $20 million. And Darren Bailey showed that he couldn't be bought. Now, Darren didn't know where he was going to come up with any additional money. He was hoping that Dick Uihlein, who is pretty much the only person funding campaigns, because he too is a billionaire. He's kind of more like the Pritzker billionaire, 3 or 4 billion, loser. He's not Ken Griffin, but he's more like the JB Pritzker millionaire or billionaire. But Darren didn't know how he was going to fund it, and people were in Richard Uihlein's ear, and they were basically trying to convince Dick Uihlein that Darren needed to go a different direction. And hindsight's 2020. I'm not going to talk about what I believe. I was there. Would I have done things different? By all means, and I've already expressed that to Darren. But Darren didn't know where he was going to come up with money. He wasn't going to come up from the state GOP.
Right.
In fact, Darren went out and started telling people not to give money to the state party. And when the leader of the grassroots movement starts telling people to contribute to candidates directly, the state party has a problem.
Yeah.
This is where the unity that Don was talking about can happen. And you're right, Jim, that if we truly start getting this thing put back together, back on track, part of the reason the Trump train isn't coming to any depot near you in Illinois is because it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Trump can't bring his train through Illinois.
No.
There's a train wreck at every depot. Now, I did say this to Joe Alexander this morning. Joe's going to be fond that I keep mentioning his name. But Joe said there is a possibility that Trump might come to East St. Louis, to the hood, or to Chicago, to the hood, because Trump-esque in his way of going to the Bronx and going to some of the Detroit down to the hood is this. He wants to send a message. This is a place that Biden won't go.
Yeah.
I won't go to Chicago.
I went
the
to
west
LA.
side of Chicago. Yeah, he won't go anywhere.
Hollywood.
But my point being is this: is we've got to get our train back on the tracks. And people keep asking me, calling me all day, texting me all day, is Darren going to be the next party chair? And here's my statement. And Jim knows this because we spoke earlier today. Jim and I, this is front loaded because Jim and I had a lot of time to talk about this today. Who do we have in 2026 as a gubernatorial candidate right now?
We don't.
And we don't. Once again, getting back to, we have no bench.
Right.
And the best candidate that we've seen who's able to get people who are what would be called people who are persuadable voters, but people who are inactive voters who weren't even really involved.
Mhm.
I mean, I still think a lot of Republicans protested and didn't go to the polls because their guy didn't win the primary.
Yeah.
And that was shown out. I believe a lot of new voters came, and that showed out. But the question is, Darren's got to be on the bench, because if no one else, I mean, Darren went through all the candidates for governor. He met with Richard Irvin. He met with Jesse Sullivan. He met with Gary Rabine. He met with Paul Schimpf. And he believed that he was the person who had the best chance. And now, granted, you can't prove, as Dan Bongino says, a counterfactual, because we don't know if one of those candidates would have done better.
Right.
I know this: until the Republican Party gets a firm grasp on everything, election integrity, the 800,000 people who are inactive voters through the Illinois State Board of Elections, we're not going to breach 2 million votes. If we don't get to 2 million votes statewide, then we're not going to win any U.S. Senate seat. We're not going to win the Secretary of State. We're not going to win Attorney General. We're not going to win Comptroller, Treasurer, Governor.
Yep.
Any statewide race is out of distance right now. And who's responsible for that, Jim?
The chair.
The chair. Hey guys, we've hit an hour, and I've got the feeling this could be one of those Ty Smith elongated modern Renaissance man podcasts, but it's not going to be. Once again, we appreciate you guys for at least jumping on with us today, and also all those people that have commented, that are viewing right now, and that will view. Go out, like, subscribe, whether you're at Rumble, YouTube, X, or Facebook. Give us a like, because, Jim, something that I'm telling people, and I know that you might not be aware of this, that we don't have conservative talk. However, we are hearing rumblings that conservative talk might be returning. I can't disclose that right now at this time, but conservative talk is going to return to Central Illinois. And right now we are the gap to that. And we want to continue to be a voice, a place where people can have this dialogue, because we should have a voice in what happens in the rest of the state, and we're going to. Hey, as I say, and Jim, I know you and Ryan, Jim, once I turn off and end the stream, you're still live with Ryan and I. So if you want to hang around for a minute afterwards, please do. As I tell you every episode, I love you, but the best part is Jesus loves you more. We will see you back here on Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have some more insight to where things are going to go. My wife is giving me one last comment. I better read it or I'm going to get in trouble. What was the response to Illinoisans who approached Darren Bailey after the election? Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to answer that before I end the show. There were people that would come up to Darren and just applaud him for running and tell him that they were behind them. And Darren got savvy enough to start asking him, did you vote for me though? And they would say, oh man, we forgot about it. It was election day. Time got away from us. Those 40 days of early voting, that was just too much for me to go vote early. But that's where things, even after won the nomination for him, there were several GOP offices who hid Bailey signs in their back rooms even after he won. My wife is over there being the keyboard warrior, as what's her name referred to her. That's another one. We had chairs that were hiding Darren Bailey signs after he won. And finally, let me see. What was the response? I think I got all of her questions answered. She's laughing, chuckling in the background. Hey, until next time, I bid you guys all a farewell. Thanks again. We'll see you on next Tuesday.